My name is Akin, and I decided to come here mainly because of Ahmed Idris. I found what he did uh, quite quite inspiring. So I'm from Nigeria. I call Lagos my hometown. Um, I was born into, so my parents are Christians, or at least call themselves Christians. My mom is what I'd call, so she is a nominal Christian. She says she's a Christian and she does read the Bible now and then, but literally doesn't go to church. So, so in a whole year, probably goes to church like once. That's at best, like most times. But she basically, and she never. So she grew up in a family where her father was born a Muslim but converted to Christianity. Her mom was a Christian, so she was quite exposed to both the world of Islam to a certain extent. So lived with Muslims and also Christians. So she has, until today, still has a lot of appreciation of the differences and the shared humanity across religions. Um, my parents are separated, and for my childhood, I mainly lived with my mom. Despite that fact, she allowed me to really find my way in terms of going to different churches of different denominations. In fact, I had a lot of association and a lot of contact with Jehovah's Witnesses. They came, yeah, so they came quite frequently, and I sat down. They talked with me. A lot of what she said didn't really surprise me. There's the whole concept of, is it the world or the end time started in 1914 or something like that. It's just, yeah, I had that whole talk. Then the whole thing about not saluting the national flag and them saying that they're being persecuted because of their beliefs and those kinds of things. And I also went to the Catholic Church because, so for the Jehovah's Witnesses, I have some family friends that are Jehovah's Witnesses currently. Maybe they're not the extreme Jehovah's Witnesses because, to be honest, a lot of, so my family friends, then when they go for social events, they still drink and yeah, but the Jehovah's Witnesses, they say they're
Progressive Jehovah's Witnesses.
I won't say they're progressive. I think they're also what one would call nominal Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're quite well educated too. So went to university, work in professional jobs. My uncle, so my aunt's husband, is also is a Muslim. So I have some Muslims in my family too. My paternal side, my dad is, he'll call himself a Christian, but in my opinion, I think he's more or less agnostic to atheist. He doesn't really bother about. In fact, he doesn't bother about religion. Most of his conversations, you'd never. So in Nigeria, one of the easy ways to know if someone may not necessarily be the most religious person. One, number of times they probably go to church or pray and do all those kinds of things. And also, a lot of times Nigerians, when they talk, God will solve this problem. God will do this. God will do that. My dad really is not that kind of person. Especially when he's talking with me in public, maybe he's like, God does this, God does that, but in private, when he's talking with me, he doesn't go to that place. So, and my uncle, I've got an uncle that isn't really, he isn't really religious. He sort of even just jokes that he's not, that if the trumpet blows today, he's probably staying here. He's not probably going. So, and then I've got another uncle that is a pastor and a deacon in the church. So he is like religious. In fact, he sort of drags my dad. Oh yeah, you have to come to church. And he's older than my dad, and there's this thing of age, and people respect even people that are older than them by a year. So he drags him along to church. And I think he knows my dad is probably not a Christian. Or yeah, so he is he is a Christian. Um, so when I so over the time that I was growing up, because I went to different denominations, uh, so I went to the Catholic Church. In fact, I got baptized, and I have a baptismal name. Got through the whole system. Um, I started reading the Bible quite frequently, and reading from Genesis to uh, Deuteronomy, Numbers, Kings, First Kings, Second Kings, Judges, and all. And we also got taught that in school, Christian religious knowledge. I remember Christian religious knowledge in for my exams were probably the easiest exams I've ever done, because almost every time I always got everything. So like it was and it wasn't really something I revised for, because it was something that I knew by heart. Even when I got to secondary school too, most times I probably got more, like everything, because it was something that I knew quite frequently. I also represented my secondary school. So for the first 3 years of my secondary school career, I went to uh, a Christian school. So there tended to be these um, competitions with other schools, and especially regarding Christianity, and I represented the school. And this was my junior secondary school years, and thankfully we won. But then I've always had a very questioning and inquisitive mind. I usually do not take things hook, line, and sinker. And I was very well, so I was encouraged from a young age from both my dad. My dad is someone that really believes in education. If there's something that he believes in, really, really believes in that. Then from my year 5 and my year 6 teachers, they really pushed us in my primary school to seek knowledge, learn new things, learn different points of view. Until today, I still have that at the back of my mind. So I think in my in my third year of secondary school, I got introduced the concept of evolution. Now, when our social studies teacher, there's a subject to do in secondary school in Nigeria called social studies. When he was introducing it, he said, yes, it's left to you if you want to believe this or you don't want to believe it. But we have to teach this anyway. And this was a Christian school, but they still taught it, thankfully. He talked about how human beings evolved. It was a very, very bare introduction to evolution, which was really what the curriculum expected of us. So at first glance, it made a lot of sense to me that if you think of it, we're very similar to other species of animals. But then I think the religious part of me sort of like took hold, and I was like, yeah, I'm not too sure. But then I changed school after then, went to a liberal, relatively liberal, and it's also an international school. So I met people of a different set of beliefs, what I'd call mainly liberal people in Nigeria. And in Nigeria, I think from my own experiences, a lot of rich people, especially if they're well-traveled, tend to be quite liberal. They may not even be the most religious people. They, once again, I'll say, they're most probably nominally Christians. They just call themselves, oh yes, I'm a Christian, because they don't want to be seen as, oh, do you think you're too big for God? God created the world, and the whole talk generally. So when I was there, I really discussed and I interacted with people on my, a lot of people in my hostel, yeah. And generally, I generally just interacted with people. But then, over time, I then realized that, goodness me, I'm not really into the whole religion thing. But I wasn't really too sure about it. I was a closet atheist, but then people on my dormitory knew, especially people on my year knew that I was an atheist. Always used to Skype Sunday Sunday school and everything. But then fast forward, because I have to, when I got to university, I started seeing other points of views, and I realized that, goodness, I think I was right, even from the age of 15, that this was really wrong. Like, when I look at the whole theory of evolution, for example, when you also look at the contradictions in the Bible, like so I read them when I was a young child, but I didn't really understand them as much. The contradictions are immense. When I also look at the, even when you look at how it's being practiced in the world today, how it's made people to feel that they are somehow better than other people because of their viewpoints, and they try to impose it on others. They then tell you that, and then when there is the whole negative consequence from their religion, they say it's not their religion, but any positive that comes from it, whether it's in the book or not in the book, they claim it and say, oh yes, this is what religion has done. Our religion never does that. When in reality, it probably does. And it's a lot of contradictions really came in. I opened up to my sister first. My sister is a Christian. And she was, oh yeah, why don't you believe? She was quite helpful. I'm very close to her. And discussed it a bit. Then I had the courage after about 7 years to tell my mom. This is about 2 months ago, and she was surprisingly very open to it. She was like, yes, why not? So long as you're a good person. And she was very open to it. She even told me that, don't worry. And I think she also feels that I'm not going to change as a human being. The child that she's known over the years will not change because of this thing. My dad sort of suspects I'm not religious. In fact, he told me at one point, if you decide not to be a Christian and decide to be a Muslim or something else later on, that's left to you. You live your life. He told me that. And so I'm very lucky that I'm from a family that is quite open towards religions and other worldviews. But I'd say that generally, and also my church in Liverpool, before I had to resign my membership, they were very good to me. But when I had to resign, I discussed it with the pastor, and then he was bringing up so many things of why I'm wrong and why this is a wrong-headed move. But when I think about it, I know anything I do will be a wrong-headed move. It's not about any reason that I've given. It's just because he doesn't want to think that I could leave Christianity. But I have to say, I had a very good relationship in the church. I think if I took that community there in the church just in isolation, I think I would probably still be a Christian. But I know that is more or less a bubble, and they don't really live in the reality that is the faith itself, how the Catholic Church tells people about contraceptives, while people in Africa are basically dying of HIV and they don't want to change it. They say all sorts of things. Oh, this is doctrine and all sorts. But let me spare you the ramblings. You could ask me other things later on. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Akin. Just a couple of points. One is, as you can see, that was actually not a horrible, horrible story. That was like a positive one, and that's really important because I think that's just as important as, my sob story, for example. Because what it is that's kind of the future I think we want to get to, where it's more like, yeah, okay, you want to be this, you want to be that, that's fine, as long as you can see the person behind the faith, right? That's the most important thing. The second point I find interesting is is multiculturalism. So when we look at Britain and we talk about multiculturalism and looking at groups as kind of faith groups, right? I've always found, speaking with people from faith and faithless backgrounds from Nigeria, there's a lot more fluidity.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot more fluidity. You've got the uncle who's a Muslim, you've got the aunt who doesn't really care, you've got, there's a lot more fluidity. And I think there's something to say in how the way we view faith in the West is actually slightly different. So if you speak to Kurds, for example, the Kurdish situation is actually similar as well, where you've got the uncle who's an atheist, you've got the aunt who's a Muslim, you've got, the Shias, Sunnis are marrying and all that kind of stuff. So I just found that very interesting. But I want to move on very quickly to the final speaker before the Q&A. So we're quite good friends, I think. And when I first spoke to her, I remember thinking, her background, similar to mine, was quite a Islamic background, I would say, doing a lot of that, what's called da'wah. It's like preaching, I guess. That was proselytizing type stuff, and, then leaving in a blaze of glory in her case. So without further ado, I want to introduce Nurhan. If you can put your hands together for Nurhan.